"This isn't a designated stop," passengers complained as the bus driver pulled over. Through the rain, a veteran with a cane struggled to walk. "Some stops aren't on any map," the driver replied, not knowing his simple act would reach the highest levels of military command. James Hawkins had driven the Route 23 bus through downtown Washington, D.C. for 18 years. His passengers were mostly government workers, tourists, and the occasional lost soul trying to find their way in the nation's capital. But something about the limping figure caught his attention that rainy Tuesday morning. The veteran's uniform was soaked through, his silver hair plastered to his forehead. Despite his obvious difficulty walking, he maintained perfect military bearing, shoulders square, chin up, eyes forward. The rain had plastered his dress blues to his frame, medals glinting dully in the gray morning light. "Sir," Hawkins called through the open door, "need a ride?" A woman in an expensive suit checked her watch irritably. "We're already running late." "Schedule says no stops between Lincoln Memorial and Arlington," another passenger added. Hawkins ignored them, watching as the veteran carefully navigated the bus steps, leaning heavily on both his cane and the handrail. His movements were precise but pained, each step carefully calculated. "Thank you, son," the veteran said quietly, reaching for his wallet. "No charge for heroes," Hawkins replied, noting the combat ribbons and what looked like a Medal of Honor beneath the veteran's rain-soaked jacket. The veteran's eyes, sharp despite his advanced age, studied Hawkins' face. "Marines?" he asked. Hawkins nodded. "2 tours. Iraq. Nothing special." "Everything special when you serve," the veteran responded, making his way to an empty seat. A young man in a business suit reluctantly moved his briefcase to make room. As Hawkins merged back into traffic, he watched the veteran in his rearview mirror. There was something familiar about him, something he couldn't quite place. The way he sat, the way he surveyed the bus interior, old habits that spoke of command experience. A student typing on her laptop suddenly straightened, doing a double-take at the veteran. She quickly pulled up a web page, her eyes widening as she looked between the screen and the elderly man. Hawkins caught fragments of whispered conversations. "Isn't that? Can't be him. The general from the Battle of..." The veteran seemed oblivious to the growing recognition, his focus on something distant, perhaps memories only he could see. His cane, Hawkins noticed, bore unit insignias, special forces, rangers, details that spoke of a lifetime of service. An older passenger leaned forward. "Excuse me, sir. Are you General Michael Hayes?" The veteran's expression didn't change, but something in his posture shifted slightly. "Once upon a time," he replied softly. The bus went completely quiet. Even those who didn't recognize the name sensed something significant was happening. Hawkins' hands tightened on the steering wheel. General Hayes was a legend in military circles, the commander who had led one of the most daring rescue operations in modern warfare. The man who had gone back into a hot zone with a broken leg to save his trapped men. "Sir," Hawkins said, his voice carrying in the silence, "it's an honor to have you aboard." The general's reflection in the mirror showed a slight smile. "Honor's mine, Marine. Nice to see someone still stops for old soldiers in the rain." A businessman who had been complaining about the unscheduled stop now looked embarrassed. He pulled out his phone, fingers moving rapidly over the screen. What none of them knew was that this simple act, a bus driver stopping for a limping veteran, had just set in motion a chain of events that would reach the highest levels of military command. The businessman's message reached his brother, a Pentagon official. "You won't believe who's on my bus. General Hayes, walking in the rain. No one at Arlington sent a car." The student's social media post spread rapidly through military networks. "Medal of Honor recipient General Hayes spotted on public bus. Someone dropped the ball." But Hawkins knew none of this. He was focused on making the ride as smooth as possible, avoiding potholes that might jar the general's obvious injuries. His own military training recognized the signs of old combat wounds, the way the general shifted his weight to manage pain he'd probably carried for decades. "Next stop, Arlington National Cemetery," Hawkins announced, then added quietly, "Unless you need somewhere else, sir?" General Hayes shook his head. "Arlington's fine. Got some old friends to visit." Several passengers who had planned to exit at Arlington remained seated, watching the interaction with growing interest. The student closed her laptop, her expression troubled as she typed one final message to her father, an active duty colonel. As they approached the cemetery, Hawkins noticed something unusual. The rain had intensified, but a group of figures in dress uniforms stood at the bus stop, waiting. Their presence seemed too deliberate to be coincidence. "Sir," he said to the general, "looks like someone might be expecting you after all." Hayes looked up, surprise flickering across his weathered features. "Wasn't supposed to be anyone. Just a private visit." Hawkins pulled the bus to a perfect stop, positioning the door directly under the shelter to minimize the general's exposure to the rain. As the door opened, the waiting officers snapped to attention. "General Hayes," the lead officer said formally. "Colonel Sanders, sir. We apologize for the transportation oversight. If we'd known you were coming." Hayes waved off the apology. "No oversight, Colonel. Sometimes an old soldier just needs to make his own way." As the general stood, every military veteran on the bus, and there were more than Hawkins had realized, rose as well. Even civilians stood, recognizing they were witnessing something important. "Thank you for the ride, Marine," Hayes said to Hawkins. "Some people forget that the greatest honor isn't in grand ceremonies. It's in simple acts of kindness." Hawkins rendered a perfect salute. "Semper Fi, General." As Hayes descended the bus steps, supported by the colonel, Hawkins couldn't know that phones were already ringing in the Pentagon. That messages were flying between commands. That his simple decision to stop for a veteran in the rain was about to become part of military legend. The bus pulled away, returning to its route, but something had changed. Passengers who had complained about the unscheduled stop now sat quietly, thoughtful. The businessman who had texted his brother stared out the window, his earlier irritation replaced by contemplation. And James Hawkins, driving his regular route through the nation's capital, had no idea that by the end of his shift, his small act of kindness would reach the highest levels of military command, triggering a response that would transform not just his life, but the way an entire city treated its veterans. The rain continued to fall, washing the streets of Washington clean, while in Arlington National Cemetery, an elderly general began his solitary pilgrimage to visit fallen comrades, his path made a little easier by a bus driver who understood that some stops aren't found on any map. In the Pentagon's earring, General Robert Blackwood's morning briefing was interrupted by an urgent message. His aide's face showed unusual emotion as she handed him a tablet displaying multiple reports and social media posts. "Sir, General Hayes was seen walking in the rain, taking a public bus to Arlington." Blackwood's coffee cup froze halfway to his mouth. "Michael Hayes? The Lion of Kandahar? That's impossible. He's supposed to be in Walter Reed 4. The aide's expression confirmed his sudden understanding. Hayes had left the hospital without authorization. Again. "Get me Walter Reed's commander," Blackwood ordered. "And find out which bus line picked him up." Across town, James Hawkins continued his route, unaware of the storm he'd sparked in the military community. The student's social media post had gone viral among service members. Medal of Honor recipient walking in rain while politicians ride in motorcades. Driver James Hawkins, Route 23, only one who stopped. Remember this next time someone says America forgot its heroes. At Walter Reed Medical Center, Dr. Sarah Anderson was dealing with the aftermath of Hayes's disappearance. "He left at 0500, she explained to General Blackwood over the phone. "Said he had promises to keep." "Promises?" Blackwood's voice softened. "Today's the anniversary, isn't it?" "Yes, sir. Operation Valiant Shield. He lost 12 men that day." 13, Blackwood corrected quietly. "He counts himself among the fallen. Part of him never left that valley." Meanwhile, the businessman's text to his Pentagon-employed brother had triggered another chain of events. Deputy Secretary of Defense William Marshall stared at his screen in disbelief. "Find me everything on this bus driver," he ordered his staff. "And get me Hayes's full service record. There's something here we're missing." James Hawkins' next stop was Union Station. As passengers boarded, he noticed something unusual. More military personnel than normal, some in uniform, others betrayed only by their bearing. They nodded to him with unusual respect. A Marine gunnery sergeant approached the front of the bus. "You picked up General Hayes this morning?" Hawkins nodded. "Just doing my job, Gunny." "No, sir, you did our job. Taking care of our own." The sergeant's voice carried quiet authority. The general, he saved my whole unit in '05. Walked through hell itself to get us out. The story began to emerge through quiet conversations as the bus continued its route. General Michael Hayes wasn't just any decorated veteran. He was the man impossible missions went to when everything else failed. At Arlington, Hayes stood in the rain before a row of graves. Colonel Sanders had offered an umbrella, but the general declined. "They didn't have shelter that day," he said simply. "Neither will I." The colonel watched as Hayes knelt, despite his injuries, to touch each headstone. 13 markers, each bearing the same date. Each representing a life lost under his command. Back in the Pentagon, General Blackwood reviewed Hayes's classified service record. 30 years of impossible missions. Hundreds of lives saved. And one mission that had haunted him for 2 decades. Operation Valiant Shield, Blackwood explained to his staff. Hayes led a rescue mission into heavily contested territory. His team was ambushed. Communications lost. High Command ordered him to abort. He paused, emotion crossing his features. Hayes refused. Went in with a broken leg from the initial attack. Carried men out on his back. When asked why he risked everything, he said, "Because someone would have stopped for my boys if they were walking in the rain." The parallel with this morning's events struck everyone in the room. At the Metro Transit Authority office, James Hawkins' supervisor received an unprecedented call. "This is General Blackwood's office. We need to speak with Driver Hawkins immediately." "He's on his route," the supervisor replied, confused. "Did something happen?" "Yes," came the reply. "Something long overdue." As afternoon approached, Hawkins began noticing more unusual activity. Police escorts clearing traffic ahead of his bus. Military vehicles shadowing his route. At each stop, service members appeared, rendering subtle salutes. A young Army lieutenant boarded, making his way to the front. "Sir, General Hayes asked me to deliver this." He handed Hawkins a weathered challenge coin, the kind given for exceptional service. Its edge was dented from where it had once stopped a bullet intended for the general's heart. The lieutenant's voice was quiet but carried clearly. "The general said to tell you, some people spend their lives walking past those who need help. Others stop. The difference defines not just a person, but a nation." Hawkins turned the coin in his hands, feeling the weight of its history. The bus had gone silent again, passengers understanding they were witnessing something profound. At Arlington, Hayes finally stood, his injuries protesting the long vigil. Colonel Sanders stepped forward. "Sir, about this morning." "Don't apologize for the bus," Hayes interrupted. "That Marine driver, he reminded me of something important. Something we've started to forget in all our protocols and procedures." "Sir." "That the greatest honor isn't in salutes and ceremonies. It's in seeing someone who needs help and simply stopping. Everything I did in uniform, every medal they pinned on my chest, it all comes down to that." As Hawkins completed another stop, he noticed more changes. Veterans who normally struggled to climb the bus steps were being assisted by mysteriously appearing service members. Passengers were giving up their seats without being asked. Something had shifted in the city's consciousness. What he couldn't know was that in the Pentagon, wheels were turning. General Blackwood had made more calls. The Deputy Secretary of Defense had called an emergency meeting. A simple act of kindness was about to spark a change in how the nation's capital treated its veterans. And somewhere in the rain-soaked streets of Washington, an old general's words echoed, "Some stops aren't on any map." Words that would soon take on new meaning for everyone who heard the story of a bus driver who stopped for a limping veteran, not knowing he was about to change the way an entire city remembered its heroes. As James Hawkins pulled into his final stop of the day, he found the Metro Transit Authority parking lot transformed. Military vehicles lined the entrance. A color guard stood at attention. His supervisor waited nervously beside a group of officers wearing stars on their shoulders. "Driver Hawkins," General Blackwood stepped forward. "A moment of your time." Inside the conference room, Hawkins sat surrounded by some of the highest-ranking military officers in the country. The story that emerged left him speechless. "What you witnessed this morning," Blackwood explained, "wasn't just a veteran in the rain. General Hayes was completing a sacred ritual he's maintained for 20 years. 13 graves. 13 men he couldn't save. Every year, he makes the journey on foot, refusing rides, refusing comfort. Because they walked, Hawkins said softly, understanding. Yes. His team walked 40 miles through enemy territory after their helicopters were shot down. Hayes, leg broken in 2 places, carried the wounded. Some made it. Some didn't. He's never forgiven himself for the ones he couldn't save. Deputy Secretary Marshall leaned forward. But that's not why we're here, Mr. Hawkins. We're here because you did something extraordinary today. Something that's made us realize how far we've strayed from our core values. The Deputy Secretary activated a screen showing social media feeds. Hundreds of posts, thousands of shares. Veterans sharing stories of being ignored, overlooked, left in the rain. And then, like a revelation, the story of one bus driver who stopped. Your actions, General Blackwood continued, sparked something. A reminder that honor isn't just about ceremonies and salutes. It's about seeing someone who needs help and taking action. A Marine colonel stood. Sir, if I may. At Blackwood's nod, he continued. I was there. Valiant shield. I saw Hayes carry men through gunfire with his leg shattered. When we asked why he kept going back, he said something I've never forgotten, because someone would have stopped for them. Hawkins looked at the challenge coin Hayes had sent him, understanding its deeper meaning now. We're instituting changes, Marshall announced. Starting today. New protocols for veteran transportation. Dedicated services. A complete overhaul of how we treat our warriors after they hang up their uniforms. But we need your help, Blackwood added. Me? Hawkins asked. I'm just a bus driver. No, came a familiar voice from the doorway. General Hayes stood there, still in his rain-soaked uniform. You're the conscience we forgot we needed. The room snapped to attention, but Hayes waved them down. At ease. Can't stand at attention with this leg anyway. He limped forward, each step carrying the weight of years of service and sacrifice. Young man, do you know what happened after you drove away this morning? Hawkins shook his head. Every military member who heard the story started asking themselves hard questions. Every civilian who witnessed it remembered what it means to serve. Your simple act of stopping that bus, it's going to change things. Marshall nodded. We're establishing the Hawkins Initiative, a comprehensive program to ensure no veteran ever has to walk in the rain again. Not just transportation, comprehensive support services, all inspired by one bus driver who remembered what it means to leave no one behind. But more than that, Hayes continued, you've reminded us of something we'd forgotten in all our protocols and paperwork. The heart of service isn't in grand gestures. It's in simple acts of kindness. In stopping when others pass by. Hawkins stood, emotion making it hard to speak. Sir, I didn't do anything special. Any Marine would have stopped. Would they? Hayes asked quietly. How many passed by before you came along? How many looked away, checked their watches, hurried past? The room fell silent, each person there confronting uncomfortable truths about how easy it is to look away, to claim protocol or schedules as excuse for inaction. The program launches next week, Marshall said. Every bus in D.C. will carry a new symbol, a gold star indicating it's part of the Veteran Support Network. Special stops, dedicated services, trained drivers who understand what it means to serve. And we want you to lead it, Blackwood added. Train the drivers. Share your perspective. Help us remember what it means to stop for a veteran in the rain. Hayes reached into his jacket, producing a set of silver jump wings, his own from Ranger School. These were given to me by a man who knew the value of stopping to help others. I've carried them through every mission, every battle. Now they belong to you. As Hawkins accepted the wings, Hayes continued. Because today, you completed my mission. 20 years ago, I couldn't save all my men. But their sacrifice taught all of us, that true honor lives in how we treat each other. In the simple decision to stop when someone needs help. The initiative expanded rapidly. Within a month, every public transportation system in D.C. had adopted the program. Veterans reported a complete transformation in how they were treated. The gold star became a symbol of hope, a reminder that someone would always stop. Other cities took notice. The program spread, first to military towns, then across the nation. What began with one bus driver stopping for a limping veteran became a movement. James Hawkins continued driving his route, now training others in the program. Each morning, he passed Arlington National Cemetery, remembering the day he learned that some stops aren't found on any map. General Hayes made one change to his annual ritual. He still walked to visit his fallen men, still refused rides in government cars. But now he took Hawkins' bus to the cemetery entrance, sharing quiet conversations about service, sacrifice, and the power of simple kindness. The challenge coin Hayes had given Hawkins was mounted in every bus in the program, bearing a new inscription, because someone would have stopped for them. And in the Pentagon, whenever discussions about veteran support arose, someone would inevitably ask, what would the bus driver do? Because James Hawkins had reminded them all, from generals to privates, from politicians to civilians, that true service isn't measured in medals or ceremonies. It's measured in the willingness to stop, to help, to remember that every veteran walking in the rain carries invisible wounds and untold stories. The rain still falls on Washington streets, but now no veteran walks alone. Gold stars shine on buses throughout the city, each one a promise remembered, each one a testament to the day a simple act of kindness changed how a nation honors its heroes. And somewhere in Arlington, 13 graves stand as silent witnesses to the truth General Hayes had carried for 20 years, that the greatest honor isn't in the medals we wear, but in the moments we choose to stop, to help, to remember that some debts can only be repaid by passing on the kindness that others have shown us. James Hawkins drives on, his bus a symbol of hope, his simple act of stopping now part of military legend. Because he proved that sometimes the greatest acts of honor aren't found in battlefield heroics or grand ceremonies, but in the quiet decision to stop for a limping veteran in the rain. And in his pocket, he carries General Hayes's challenge coin, its battle-scarred surface a reminder that true courage isn't always about charging into gunfire. Sometimes it's about stopping your bus, opening your door, and reminding a hero that they're not forgotten. The Hawkins Initiative continues to grow, spreading across the country, each gold star a promise kept, each stop a moment of recognition and respect. Because one bus driver remembered what others had forgotten, that honor isn't just about where we're going, but about who we stop for along the way. Thanks for watching. See you again in the next video. Stay stunned.